Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to discuss a shocking escalation in the war as Zaporizhzhia, one of Ukraine's most critical regions, has reportedly been engulfed in overnight strikes by Russian forces. According to reports, Russia launched a wave of powerful attacks targeting Ukraine's air defense systems, particularly S-300 missile batteries, as well as drone operation hubs in and around the city. These developments raise serious questions about the balance of power on the battlefield, Ukraine's defensive capabilities, and Russia's evolving strategy. Let's break down what happened, why it matters, and what could come next. The strikes on Zaporizhzhia began overnight and continued into the early morning hours. Russian forces used a mix of cruise missiles, drones, and possibly short-range ballistic systems to overwhelm Ukrainian defenses. The main targets, according to Russian military claims, were the S-300 missile systems that Ukraine has relied on for intercepting incoming missiles and protecting key infrastructure. These S-300s, though Soviet-era technology, have remained central to Ukraine's ability to defend its airspace. By knocking out these assets, Russia hopes to open up the skies for more unrestricted bombing runs and missile strikes deep into Ukrainian-held territory. What makes this incident particularly concerning is the precision of the strikes. Russian intelligence appears to have identified exact locations of the S-300 batteries and Ukraine's drone hubs, facilities where operators launch and coordinate drone missions against Russian forces. Over the past year, Ukrainian drones have become one of the most effective weapons in the conflict, striking oil depots, airfields, and logistical centers far behind Russian lines. Taking out the drone hubs in Zaporizhzhia could deal a serious blow to Ukraine's ability to conduct such operations. Zaporizhzhia itself is a region of massive strategic importance. It is not only home to one of the largest nuclear power plants in Europe, but also sits on a critical axis that connects southern Ukraine with the Eastern Front. For months, both sides have fought intensely in and around this area, with Ukraine trying to push south towards Melitopol and the Sea of Azov, while Russia has sought to consolidate its defensive lines and keep control of supply routes. An attack of this scale in Zaporizhzhia highlights just how vital the region remains in the larger conflict. Ukrainian officials, however, have pushed back against some of Russia's claims. They admit that strikes took place and that damage was sustained, but they insist that not all of their S-300 batteries were destroyed. According to Ukraine's military command, some incoming missiles were intercepted and defensive positions remain intact. Still, even partial losses are significant. Replacing air defense systems is extremely difficult for Ukraine, especially given the high demand for modern systems like Patriot or Iris-T supplied by Western allies. Every destroyed S-300 means fewer chances to intercept Russian missiles and drones in the future. It is also worth noting that Russia's use of combined arms in this operation demonstrates a calculated strategy. Instead of relying solely on drones or missiles, Russia reportedly launched waves designed to overwhelm Ukrainian radar and defense systems. Some drones acted as decoys, while precision missiles followed behind to hit hardened targets. This layered approach is reminiscent of how Russia has learned from earlier failures in the war, adapting its tactics to overcome Ukraine's increasingly advanced Western-supplied technology. For Ukraine, the destruction of drone hubs is another serious setback. In recent months, Ukrainian drone warfare has expanded rapidly. Long-range drones have struck as far as Moscow, creating both psychological and material damage inside Russia. Small kamikaze drones have harassed Russian positions on the front lines, disrupting supply convoys and artillery. Losing coordination centers and operators in Zaporizhzhia could delay or reduce the effectiveness of these missions. Ukraine will likely attempt to rebuild or relocate such facilities, but the immediate blow could limit their drone strikes in the short term. The strikes also send a message to Western allies. Russia is demonstrating that it can still conduct large-scale, coordinated operations against key Ukrainian military infrastructure. This comes at a time when debates are ongoing in Western capitals about sustaining long-term military aid to Ukraine. By showing that Ukraine's Soviet-era air defense is vulnerable and being systematically dismantled, Russia hopes to create doubt about whether continued support will ultimately change the balance of the war. Another layer to this story is the psychological impact on the civilian population. Zaporizhzhia is already a city under constant threat with regular air raid sirens and artillery barrages. The news that entire air defense systems and drone hubs have been wiped out overnight adds to the sense of vulnerability. Civilians fear that with fewer defenses, the likelihood of more devastating strikes on residential areas, infrastructure, and power plants will only increase. Ukraine has worked hard to reassure its people, but the reality is that defending against Russia's missile stockpiles remains a daunting task. The destruction of S-300s also complicates Ukraine's counteroffensive plans. Over the summer and fall, Ukraine sought to advance in Zaporizhzhia towards Tokmak and Melitopol, key cities that, if liberated, would cut Russia's land corridor to Crimea. Such operations require air defense coverage to protect advancing troops from Russian air power. Without enough functioning missile batteries, Ukrainian brigades moving forward become highly vulnerable to Russian helicopters, jets, and guided bombs. In essence, Russia may have not only struck defensive capabilities, but also weakened Ukraine's offensive momentum. Despite these losses, Ukraine is not without options. Western partners have been supplying newer air defense systems, including Patriot batteries, NASAMS, and German Iris-D systems. However, these are limited in number and usually positioned around major cities like Kiev. Moving them closer to Zaporizhzhia would stretch already thin defenses across the country. This is exactly the dilemma Russia wants Ukraine to face: spread its systems thin and leave some areas exposed, or concentrate defenses and risk losing entire regions to precision strikes. One of the broader implications of this attack is the evolving role of drones in modern warfare. Both sides have increasingly relied on drones not just for strikes, but also for surveillance, targeting, and electronic warfare. By targeting Ukraine's drone hubs, Russia acknowledges just how central these assets have become to the conflict. But the strikes also highlight a reality. Drone warfare requires infrastructure, operators, and safe hubs. These can be vulnerable, and when destroyed, the network can temporarily collapse. Russia's claim of wiping out multiple hubs also serves propaganda purposes. Moscow can present this as proof to its domestic audience that it is not just on the defensive, but actively dismantling Ukraine's capabilities. In the information war, this narrative is just as important as the actual battlefield effects. Meanwhile, Ukraine has been quick to counter these claims, insisting that its drone campaign will continue and that not all facilities have been neutralized. The truth likely lies somewhere in between, with significant but not total damage sustained. The timing of the strikes is also noteworthy. They come as Western discussions about additional aid packages are heating up. Russia may have deliberately escalated in Zaporizhzhia to show that Ukraine's defenses are eroding and to argue that continued aid is futile. At the same time, Ukraine will use these very strikes to press for more advanced air defense systems and fighter jets from its allies, highlighting how vulnerable it remains without further support. In the broader context of the war, this event underscores a dangerous pattern. Russia appears to be shifting back to a strategy of attrition, grinding down Ukraine's defenses through relentless strikes, while fortifying its defensive lines on the ground. By systematically targeting air defense and drone assets, Russia aims to reduce Ukraine's ability to contest the skies. This would allow Moscow to rely more heavily on its air force and missile arsenal, regaining an advantage it lost in the early phases of the war when Ukrainian defenses performed surprisingly well. Yet, history in this conflict has shown that Ukraine is highly resilient. Each time Russia inflicts a major blow, Ukraine adapts, innovates, and finds new methods to strike back, whether through the creation of domestically produced drones, clever redeployment of surviving assets, or new waves of Western aid. Ukraine has repeatedly demonstrated the ability to recover. The key question now is how quickly they can rebound from this latest assault on Zaporizhzhia. For the people of Zaporizhzhia, however, the immediate concern is survival. With reduced defenses, the city faces an even greater risk of sustained bombardment in the coming weeks. Power stations, infrastructure, and civilian homes could all become easier targets. The humanitarian situation could deteriorate further, especially as winter approaches and the need for reliable electricity and heating grows more urgent. Looking ahead, this attack is not just about one night of strikes. It reflects a broader trend in the war. Russia's attempt to methodically degrade Ukraine's ability to defend itself while waiting for Western fatigue to set in. Ukraine, on the other hand, will likely respond with renewed appeals for international support, intensified drone strikes of its own, and creative strategies to maintain pressure on Russian logistics. In the end, Zaporizhzhia has once again become a symbol of the high-stakes struggle between Russia and Ukraine. The destruction of S-300s and drone hubs is a tactical win for Russia, but whether it becomes a strategic turning point remains to be seen. Much will depend on how quickly Ukraine can recover, how much aid Western allies are willing to provide, and how long Russia can sustain these large-scale operations. This conflict continues to evolve with each passing day, and the strikes on Zaporizhzhia highlight just how dangerous and unpredictable it remains. The balance of power is fragile, and every destroyed system, every successful strike, and every lost hub shifts the dynamics on the ground. What is certain is that the war is far from over, and both sides are preparing for an even more intense struggle ahead.